you can go to these websites on your PS5 and test out the WebKit exploit. And so far, people have confirmed it working up to firmware 13.60. We even have a video from Dr. Yan Yan, who runs it on the latest firmware, 13.60, and we can see it does run to completion on that console. And just recently, we now have another exploit page hosted by Zeko. So zekoxio.github.io/slopkit2, where you can test out a version that is attempting to chain the WebKit exploit with the PoP's kernel exploit up to firmware 12.0. Only supported on firmwares 9.0 to 12.0, and there's still a few issues getting the kernel exploit to load successfully, but we seem to be getting very close now to a full jailbreak through the web browser. Now, if you want to test that out yourself, you can set your DNS in your network settings to 62.210.38.117, and then sign out and back into your profile. Open the user guide page in the settings, and it should redirect you to EchoStretch's host, from which you have a URL redirector, which can be used to test out the exploit. If your console already has an existing jailbreak, you can also install a web browser shortcut by copying it over to the root of a USB drive, and then plugging that into the PS5. Use the debug settings package installer in the settings to install the package file, and that will install a web browser shortcut in the media section on the home page, and you can access it from there and use that to access the website. If you just want to test out the WebKit exploit on its own, that works from 9.00 to 13.60, and you can do that by going to zekoaxio.github.io/slopkit, and if it comes up with a notification saying sandbox escaped, then it's working on your console. To test out the full jailbreak version that's chained with the PoP's kernel exploit to jailbreak up to 12.0, go to zekoaxio.github.io/slopkits2. This is the version that attempts to fully jailbreak from the web browser, but it's not quite complete at the time that I'm recording this, as it's still under development, but you can test it out on firmwares 9.0 to 12.0. Now, the sandbox escape notification, that's only for the userland portion of the exploit. The kernel exploits does not make it to completion at this stage. It is still, of course, under development, but we are getting very close now to having this functional to be able to jailbreak with the web browser. Now, PlayStation will want to patch this WebKit exploit as quickly as possible, especially because it works up to the latest firmware, 13.60, just the WebKit portion of the exploit, of course, but they are working on a new system software version. There is a beta release of system software version 14, which does add a few new features. They've enhanced the PSSR image quality for PlayStation 5 Pro. They've also changed the way the turn-off Bluetooth option works, where it will prevent you from now going into rest mode and stop HDMI device link from functioning when you turn off Bluetooth. And they've also improved system software performance and stability, so whenever the new update comes out, they will likely patch the WebKit exploit. We also got the release of the new Blu-ray userland exploit from Jajine. So this is now BD-JB5, which was originally the BD on Jailbreak project, and you can see it works up to firmware 13.42 and is patched in firmware 13.60. So the big deal with this is that you can now jailbreak with a Blu-ray disc again up to 12.0 without having to unpatch the Blu-ray jailbreak, because this version of the Blu-ray jailbreak is not patched. So all you have to do is burn it to a Blu-ray disc. You can see the project here. We have the ISO file, and we also have the PoP's kernel exploit that you can send over the network to run the jailbreak. So that's what we've got there. And again, we could also get Patience to Jailbreak potentially ported over to this as well, with the 50-minute jailbreak, which will work up to 12.70, that you could load with a Blu-ray disc instead of going through the YouTube jailbreak. If you prefer to use a Blu-ray disc, that could be another option. But again, the main benefit of something like this right now is the 12.0 jailbreak, because it only takes a few seconds to jailbreak, works up to 12.0, and with this version, you no longer need to unpatch the Blu-ray jailbreak. So we're also starting to see autoloaders get released for this new Blu-ray jailbreak. So from its PLK, we have the BD Jailbreak Autoloader version 1.5.0. So it's updated the userland exploit to BD-JB5 2.0 from Getjia, so the unpatcher is no longer needed on supported firmwares. The offloader's been updated as well, along with the unified autoloader, which includes the payload manager, the latest version 0.5.1. So the autoloader is supported up to firmware 12.0. So all you do is burn the ISO file to a Blu-ray disc, and then you can load that Blu-ray disc on the console, and when it runs the jailbreak, it will also close the disc player. Once it's done, and it should automatically run the payload manager, which will then allow you to fully set up the jailbreak and install and run any payloads that you want. So the benefits of these two new userland exploits, the web browser and the Blu-ray jailbreak, is the fact that we can now chain them with our existing kernel exploits. So the poopsploit up to 12.0, so we could use the web browser and the Blu-ray disc to jailbreak up to 12.0, and it only takes a few seconds to load that jailbreak. And then up to 12.70, we have the 50-minute jailbreak that could also potentially be loaded with these new userland exploits, the web browser and the Blu-ray disc, to jailbreak up to 12.70, but it would still take 50 minutes for that jailbreak. And then, of course, any future kernel exploits that come out for the PS5, we would be able to load those kernel exploits and turn them into a full jailbreak, loading them from the web browser or the Blu-ray disc. So that is the general advantage of having these new userland exploits release. So beyond that, there's been a couple of other updates. We have the PS5 YouTube Jailbreak Autoloader was also updated. So the exploit that uses the YouTube jailbreak, and this is the Autoloader version that automatically loads the payload manager once jailbroken. So this version just includes the latest updates from the original YouTube Jailbreak Userland project from GetGina, which basically adds a new version of the YouTube application that works up to the latest firmware on the PS5, but obviously we don't have any jailbreaks. We can load up to the latest firmware with the YouTube jailbreak yet, so it's not really going to be that useful at the moment. It's just getting the autoloader ready for, I guess, any future jailbreaks that could be loaded with this. But for now, obviously it doesn't really change the status quo at the moment, so you don't necessarily need to update to this version if you're on version 0.9. Now we have another homebrew development from John Tornblom, who has figured out a way to launch web applications in full screen, similar to how existing streaming applications work. Now this allows for hardware-assisted video decoding, and the project showcasing this method is called SVT Play, which just installs directly from a payload. And once installed, the application can continue to function on a reboot, even when the jailbreak is no longer running. Now this could open the door to new types of web-based homebrew applications that we could start seeing, especially ones with media streaming capabilities, like perhaps a dedicated Jellyfin or MB application for the PlayStation 5. We also have another kernel bug that is being looked at to see if it could be useful for the PlayStation 5 particularly. So this comes to us from a security advisory for the FreeBSD project, which causes a local denial of service and possible privilege escalation via routing sockets. So it does say here supported versions, are FreeBSD 13.5 up to version 15. The PS5 runs an older version of FreeBSD, but I believe they only list the supported versions of FreeBSD here, so it could well affect older FreeBSD versions, including the PlayStation 5. So what it says here is that the impact of this bug is that it allows unprivileged user to crash the kernel by triggering a stack buffer overflow in the RTSOC MSG buffer. In particular, the overflow will corrupt a stack canary value that is verified when the function returns. This mitigates the impact of the stack overflow by triggering a kernel panic, but other kernel bugs may exist which allow user space to find the canary value and thus defeat the mitigation, at which point local privilege escalation may be possible. So it looks like just standalone, it seems to just cause a denial of service, aka kernel panic, but there may be a route to getting privilege escalation beyond that. Certainly looks like something that might be worth looking into. It may also have the potential to affect the PlayStation 4. It also looks like there's another $10,000 report incoming on the HackerOne bug bounty program for PlayStation because the bounty rewards went up by $10,000, although the report has not surfaced yet in the activity section. And Zacko is indicating that this bug report is coming to us from SlidyBat, who is somebody that has requested disclosure for vulnerabilities in the past, though likely will do with this one as well if it is a significant vulnerability like a kernel exploit. There's also a new pre-release build of ShadowMount Plus from Drakmore, so this again is considered a test version at the moment, but it has a bunch of new features, including the fan target temperature, which has been implemented. So there's a new variable in the configuration file called fan target temperature, which is equal to auto by default, but you can set a different target temperature in there instead of auto, and then it will try and maintain that temperature. So I believe it's basically trying to implement that same functionality from the ShadowMount Plus fan project as well. So it also optimizes LVD mounting and enabled the BFS fast path with 64 kilobyte I/O batching where supported, enabled compressed offset catching for nested PFS images, updated image creation scripts to use a fixed 64-bit XBAT allocation unit, improved LVD and MD image mount and unmount stability. Busy images are now unmounted safely without a forced teardown, and obviously the fan temperature and expanded backport Union FS diagnostic logging. And we have even more improvements to PS5 emulation on the PC, with Kite PS5 getting some significant updates recently. Like for instance, we have GTA 5 that's able to load further into the menus, properly starting to load the campaign, and in fact somebody's actually managed to get it to load into the campaign itself. Obviously nothing really rendering, but it actually is able to boot in-game. And on top of that, we have more games tested by Tech Junkie Aman, and they have tested 4 different games that are now running smoothly at around 60 FPS, so up to 60 FPS, so multiple games tested here from 2D games and 3D games, but particularly Pac-Man World Repack was one of the games that was really struggling at 1 or 2 frames per second with earlier versions of Kite PS5. With the updated version here, it is running at up to 60 FPS, sort of anywhere from 40 to 60 FPS with this test, which is incredible, and we have other 3D games also running at playable frame rates now. And on versions of the emulator that are still being worked on, people are able to actually get Demon Souls loaded into the menus, and of course SharpEMU, there's a development build of SharpEMU that is actually rendering the character creator and the in-game models for Demon Souls as well. So just huge improvements across the board here with PlayStation 5 emulation. I don't think anybody expected for things to get this far this quickly. But anyway, that's going to do it here for this one, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information